It's really important that when you're having conversations with people with different backgrounds than you, that you listen to listen and not listen to respond.
Eli, welcome to POVz. I'm so happy to have you here. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Such an honor. I can't wait to dive into all the things that make you you and that have formed your unique POV on the world. So you ready to dive in?
I'm ready.
Let's do it. So Eli, we always start off with somewhat of a spicy question to get our juices flowing.
Got it.
So my question for you is, do you think women will ever be fully equal to men in terms of our rights in this country?
I want to say yes. And I feel like I live my life every day so that the daughter that I have one day will experience a more equitable life, have more equity than I currently do, than you currently do, than our mothers and grandmothers have had. Feminism is so intersectional, and until we get it to a point where all women, all people who identify as women have equity, there's no equity. We won't be equal to men. So I think it's a bit of a longer road, and I would be wrong if I didn't say that we've come so far, but it's also every day we're also taking steps back. So it's frustrating because I want to be that, gung-ho feminist that's yes, but I'm I feel a little bit hopeless if I'm being honest with you.
I hear you. And that's so real.
Yeah.
Do you think we'll see a shift in our lifetime?
I think if you don't have hope, you have nothing. So I have hope that yes, we will. I mean, we have the first female vice president of this country, a woman of color. That's tremendous stride that I didn't think I would see in my lifetime. It's hard to even say what we're gonna be able to fight for, but I think that's all we can do. Use our voices, especially as white women, use our privileges. Again, use our voices to the fullest potential that we have. So what else do we have?
I couldn't agree more. And I know you brought up feminism being intersectional. What does being a feminist mean to you?
I think the word becomes really hotly contested. Everybody has so many opinions about it. I think at the end of the day, it's about equity. It's also about so many other things, and it can be so individual. I think what's most important for me is that feminism is intersectional, meaning it's about all women, all people who identify as women, not just white women, not just rich women, not just privileged women. And it's also about choice, and choice being an important word. The choice to be a stay-at-home mom, the choice to be able to go work and make the same amount as your male coworkers, the choice to have children, the choice not to. I think it's about representing every choice that a woman could make that honors her own life. I think that's what it really is to me. And I think sometimes we get really far from that when we're thinking about feminism, which can also be counterproductive.
Thank you for sharing that. I think you said it so eloquently, and
Thank you.
You're right. Feminism is a contested, controversial term.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
I think if you look at all the waves of it, there was different times that it was contested for different reasons. If I look at what it meant to be a feminist to my grandma or mom, they might have thought that it was we got that whole era of feminists being aggressive, angry, connotated so negatively, which is just frankly untrue. And also women are allowed to be angry. People thought that if you were, a girly girl or you liked the color pink, you couldn't be a feminist, which is just untrue. I think that there's just been a lot of pushback, and our biggest issue is other women pushing back on feminism and other women saying, you're wrong for doing this as a woman, you're wrong for doing that. I think we all just need to get on the same page.
One of the biggest pieces of feminism is using your voice and speaking up for the things that matter to you, which I think is something you do so well, Eli. I mean, I love your podcast, I love your content, and you are someone who is completely unafraid to share her points of view on the things that matter. So I would love to know, what gave you the courage to start speaking up and speaking out about the topics that resonate with you?
I don't know if you feel like this ever, but there are certain things that make me so mad that it gets me hot, and I have no choice. It gets me so riled up.
What are some of those things?
Definitely women's rights, definitely the race issues that this country's been facing, definitely equity for LGBTQIA+. I have a gay brother, and obviously it's personal to me, but it's also just more than personal. It's human rights. It just gets me so annoyed when people think they have a say on who somebody else is allowed to marry. Those things get me so riled up that I just eventually was I'm gonna speak up on this, and if someone doesn't like me because I'm being loud, okay, that's their loss. Me using my voice could help somebody either feel comforted or feel like they could do the same or feel a little bit more educated. Having hard conversations is really important. Having a platform makes me feel like I have a really big responsibility, and you have a really big responsibility to share, not spread misinformation and share really great resources and help people if you can help people. I think that that's my biggest thing. I just want to help in any way that I can. And like when you're feeling helpless, there's always something you can do. There's always money you can raise. There's always something you can attend, a community that you can go to, organizing, even just sharing resources, all that stuff.
I think that's so admirable. And I know you mentioned that some of those issues that you feel really fierily passionate about, there are some issues where there's just a side to it that you cannot entertain. Are there people in your life, maybe outside of your echo chamber, or friends or family members that you feel do have different views than you and you're still able to maintain that relationship?
For sure. I mean, I grew up in an area that is pretty, I would say it leans conservatively. Growing up there was a very sheltered existence. I was very naive. I ended up writing a piece 2 years ago for my college newspaper that was about the subconscious racism that was like everywhere when I was growing up, but nobody would explicitly be like, I'm a racist, because they all thought they're good people and they didn't understand that like racism can be synonymous with much more than like explicit. It can be very implicit. Being surrounded by that, I think that most of my close people share my viewpoint and the things that are important to me. Being homophobic, being racist, being sexist, being misogynist, like that shit doesn't fly with me. I don't think I know a lot of people personally that I would consider friends or like close family members that exist in any of those spheres. But I definitely do think there are people around me that have different opinions than I do. And I think it goes back to having those hard conversations, because that can be the impetus to change someone's mind or have someone take a step back and realize like, okay, well, I might not ever want to get an abortion for me, but being pro-choice means that everybody has the right to choose whether or not they want one. And I think like that point of view could come out of like a really tough conversation with someone that might be pro-life.
I think it's so admirable that you felt the courage to speak up about something so close to home. And I think a lot of us at different points in our journey discover that we're trapped in an echo chamber, and it seems like that was your moment.
Yeah.
How have you continued to maybe engage in those conversations with people either from your hometown or people who fall outside of your echo chamber to continue fostering those conversations?
Yeah, I think after that piece, I was really close with my history department in my high school because I love history. And a lot of what I talked about in that piece was that I felt like I was served a whitewashed version of history because my high school was 99.99% white. And I had some teachers reach out to me being like, I never knew you felt like this. And that definitely opened up conversations where I was like, I'm not blaming you. I just think it's a call to action. So that was like a really interesting moment for me to have those conversations with people from home. But I think now using my platform, I have really engaging conversations with like other creators, with my audience and my followers. You know, we have those conversations. And I'm really grateful that I'm able to facilitate those dialogues in a way and also like take part in them because of the internet. Like the internet can be so harmful for so many reasons. It opens up the door to have so many important dialogues and just like have those conversations wherever you can facilitate them.
Everything that you do is really the embodiment of what I'm trying to create. We have to have more spaces where we're not afraid to even write or speak up or start a podcast or do something to use our voices for good. How did it feel the first time you posted something or recorded an episode that covered a difficult issue? I know you're constantly covering taboo topics, from dating to, you know, everything that you've experienced, from your mental health to struggling with disordered eating. Yeah. How did it feel the first time that you really put that out there?
I remember I was like going about my life. I had like 100,000 followers on TikTok, and I was like making one of my snack jars that I originally went viral for on TikTok, and someone commented and was like, I wish I could make one of these, but I never could have this in my house because of my binge eating disorder. And I like stared at the comment for like half hour, thinking to myself, like, if I am brave enough to open up about this to 100,000, maybe more people, then maybe that could help one person. And I was really afraid because I had never put a label on it. Like, there were people in my life, like my mom and my close friends, that knew I struggled with eating problems. I had never put a name on it. I had never like spoken about it explicitly. And I remember just like making the choice to like go all in. And I made the video talking about my experience and like, you know, some ways that I was able to remedy that, and like just suggesting to this person that they're not by themselves, they're not alone in this. It was just so inspiring to me that other people felt the courage to talk about themselves and their struggles. I think that was like one of the first big moments that I remember like being like, okay, I'm doing this. And then I think like slowly I've always been super interested in dating and sex. And in college, I wrote an article about virginity and like religion and like the constructs. And I remember writing this article about losing my virginity. And I remember before I published it, texting my parents being like, do you guys care? It felt natural eventually. And now I realize in my day-to-day that I'm a bit more crass or open than like the average person, but it's so natural to me that I feel like I shock people sometimes when I'm talking about something, because sex and vibrators and all that stuff, I don't think of it as something taboo.
I think what's super interesting is that all of these topics for some reason are still so stigmatized, like you said, but you have gotten to a place where you're completely open. Do you think in our lifetime we'll also see a lot of these topics destigmatized?
I think that like talking about vibrators, like even like I've watched the way that like myself and other creators who talk about vibrators has like slowly destigmatized like pleasure. And like female pleasure is still incredibly hard to talk about on the internet because it's censored. But I think like we're getting to a place where like that's more normal. Even when I was in college, I can't imagine talking about an orgasm on the internet or even seeing somebody else do it. So I think we're definitely getting to a place where like that's becoming more normal. There's obviously still stigma around these topics, but it's getting to such a strong place where the stigma's taken off so much. What really helps is when people with platforms talk about it, because it inspires other people to do so themselves. So like you having this and hosting the show is like just a great example of that. Yeah, I think that hopefully we will get to a place where there's just like no stigma at all.
For young people out there that aren't quite where you are yet, for people that are still afraid to talk about these taboo topics, how do you think young people can start the conversation?
I think you have to start them in your inner circles first because you feel more comfortable that way. In college, I'd never even felt comfortable talking to my friends about like vibrators or anything like that. And now it's like something I wouldn't even think twice about. I always say to people, when you decide to like truly be and claim yourself and you decide to like be fully open and confident, you have to think of it as like a train leaving the station and you're getting on the train. And some people are gonna be like, I'm not in for that, and they're just gonna stay at the station, but you don't want them on your train, right? Like the people that matter are getting on your train. So I think you have to figure out who's getting on your train first. So for me in college, when I started to be a little bit more open about these kinds of things, I sort of like started these conversations in my circles first to see who was getting on my train and who was like, I don't like how opinionated and loud she is. And then after that, it just slowly got easier. And then writing is like an incredible way to do it. Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, like again, absolute hotbeds for misinformation, but at the same time can be so incredible for opening dialogues. Podcasts, even like listening to podcasts, getting more comfortable with the uncomfortable. And then I think like slowly you'll start feeling more open putting it out there. I don't hold back anymore. And it's because I think I started those conversations with my circles first and I eased my way into it.
Honestly, that train metaphor is brilliant.
Thank you.
I think it's so true that if we don't even make that decision to jump and get on the train, you're never going to actually get to the next spot in your journey in your life. And I'm just so grateful to have someone like you to look to who really is trailblazing and speaking up about these issues, because that's how we're going to move the needle.
And you too.
Thanks. And is there anything, Eli, that you know now that you wish you knew then when maybe you were starting these hard conversations?
I wish I listened to listen a little bit more. Coming from such a privileged background, such a upper class area, I thought I knew what it looked like to be a progressive person. I thought I knew what it looked like to be somebody that cared about these things, but I actually didn't. And I remember when I was a junior in college, someone was talking to me and they said, it's really important that when you're having conversations with people with different backgrounds than you, that you listen to listen and not listen to respond. And that forever changed my life. I'm really grateful that that person said that to me. It made me realize that I don't know shit, that because I am a privileged white woman, I don't know shit, and that my job as a privileged white woman is listening to listen when people are willing to have something to say to me, and also to use my own privileges to break the glass ceiling for other people. So I think like listening to listen was something I wish I did earlier, but like as a naive teenager, I wasn't doing that. It was like one of the biggest lessons I ever learned in my life.
That's huge. Listen to listen. I love that. Eli, we're going to start heading into our segment on POVz, where we're going to start introducing viewpoints from the larger Gen Z community. So keep an eye on your phone. We're going to send you some texts.
Yay.
And then you're going to read them out loud and react.
A boyfriend is a boyfriend, not a sneaky link. If I was dating someone and they called me sneaky link, I would feel pretty insecure in the relationship.
What does that mean? What's a sneaky link?
So like a while back, I had a conversation with my boyfriend. So I've been in a relationship about his place on my social media, because I do TikTok full time. It's a lot. And how I could like create a little bit more anonymity for him, but also like make it more fun and, you know, keep it my platform, but have him be incorporated. So I started using the term sneaky link, and I said, you know, every man that you're in a relationship with is a sneaky link until marriage, because men don't deserve the boyfriend title. And it was like a funny joke and people get really mad about it. But it's so interesting to me that people will watch a 10-second video of me calling my boyfriend a sneaky link, which he has consented to. He thinks it's funny. They'll judge my relationship and be like, if I was him, I'd break up with her because she's calling him that, as though I'm like bullying him. And it's not like a funny joke between me and my partner of a year and a half. It gets me kind of frustrated because I'm like, you guys don't know my relationship. You don't know my boyfriend. People don't understand that like people do things on TikTok for views and comments. I don't know, I just think it's funny. I think if my partner like was mad about that, I would be like, where's the sense of humor, babes? Or if I brought it up and he was mad about it, I'd be like, great, we're not gonna do it.
Yeah, it's like an inside joke.
And if somebody else is like, I would never do that in my relationship, amazing. Don't yuck someone else's yum. I'm not gonna yuck yours.
There you go.
So
hey,
that's
at least it started some conversations.
You know what? It did. Is it just me, or does it seem like most books are written by old white men and so discouraging as a woman who wants to write? How can we change that? I don't agree that most books are written by old white men. I agree that the American canon of literature that I was taught in school, that a lot of people are taught, is a canon of old white men. That is 100% true. So publishing is a male-dominated industry. I don't think that most books are written by old white men. I actually don't think that's true at all. I think it's either an even split or a little bit more female authors. As somebody who had the same realization, I had a New Year's resolution, I think in 2017, that I was only gonna purchase books by non-binary authors, female authors, authors of color, authors in the LGBTQIA plus community, because I was like, if I want to write books and I want to be an author, me buying books written by white men actually isn't helping the problem to like support and uplift these voices that are like equally important. Books with male protagonists sell on average like multiple millions more copies than books with female protagonists. It's like, it's crazy. There's definitely a gender bias in publishing. But I think if you want to change that, you have to do something. Yeah, eventually, I don't know, I was just kind of like, okay, I'm gonna do this because this matters to me, it's important to me. And then one day, when I can get my book deal, I'm gonna make sure that like my goal in life is to help other writers that are not white men get the same things that I've been able to attain. So that's always been important to me. So I think you kind of have to like set your sights and do it. It's really important to me. It's a really good question.
I love what you said. Do something. I can't wait to read your book.
Oh my gosh, thank you. I'm a young person in New York City who wants to be a writer. How do I get started? I have a newsletter and write for my college paper, but I feel like there's more to do, just don't know what. I felt really similarly to that person when I was in college. I wanted to be an author so bad. And like when you tell adults that you want to be a fiction writer or a poet, they like laugh at you. It's just like not attainable. My biggest advice for anyone who's starting out that wants to be a writer is you have to write like everything you're writing is going in the New York Times, because you just do not know who's going to see it. You just do not know who's one day going to be like, yeah, send me your clips. And if your clips aren't at the level that you want them to be because you felt like, oh, I'm writing for a college newspaper, not the New York Times, you're gonna be so disappointed, right? Like everything is gonna be seen by the editor-in-chief of the New York Times. That's like a huge piece of advice. For more outlets, I think starting a Substack or a blog is really great. Sharing it out on social media, being unabashed with all of that. Even if you don't feel like anyone's reading it, it's a great way to flex the muscle. Always, always, always have conversations with all your English teachers, all your creative writing professors. Go on LinkedIn, check who's your like second or third connection that went to your school or is from your hometown that you have some sort of link to, and then they work at a publication or they're an editor. Email them, ask for an informational interview. Like you just have to be so relentless, and you just never ever know who's gonna see it. And that's exactly sort of what happened to me. Like obviously my platform helped tremendously, but I was sort of like developing myself as a writer on the internet in college because I was posting all of my fiction and all of my poems on my Instagram. And I put myself on public and I made myself a business account with the word writer, and I started blogs, and I was doing it for nobody. I was writing stories for nobody. Just keep going. Maybe it's not gonna feel like, you know, you're really getting anywhere, but you are going to get somewhere if you be relentless.
That's great advice.
Women talking about sex publicly sets a bad image for young girls. It should be a sacred topic for marriage only. If your religion is telling you I have to wait till marriage, amazing. You're choosing that. Do not make your religious preference my issue or something that has anything to do with me. If I want to have sex, I'm gonna have sex before marriage. Like I'm not a virgin. I didn't want to wait till marriage. I'm not at all targeting or saying it is bad to wait till marriage. If that is your religious preference, that's great. A lot of people that are waiting till marriage tend to be from specific Christian sects of Christianity. It's just like, why do you care what other people are doing in the bedroom? You do whatever you want to do in the bedroom. I'm gonna do whatever I want to do in the bedroom. Men talk about sex like till the cows come home all day. It's so normal for them to talk about like taboo topics like masturbation and orgasms and sex and whatever else. When women talk about it, it's like dirty and she's seen as like unprofessional. That's always bothered me so much. The problem is the way that we stigmatize women feeling pleasure in sexual settings with cisgendered heterosexual men, or women having problem feeling pleasure in any setting with anybody having sex. So the more we talk about it, the more we'll be able to help women to feel more empowered, because as we know, men having sex they're finishing way more. And I just like, I don't know, like I want my girls to feel good. Like that's important to me. If talking about sex is gonna make people not like me or make people unfollow me or make a brand not work with me, like so be it. Don't judge what I'm gonna do in the bedroom. I'm not judging what you do in the bedroom.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that's so important. We just have to talk about it more.
Yeah.
And that's the only way we're gonna destigmatize it.
I have to admit it, I'm a little boy crazy. Can I still be a feminist? Boy crazy. Okay, that's like a colloquial term. Like everybody knows what that means. Generally speaking, is placed onto women, girls, girl crazy. Is it a thing? Yes. Do we talk about it in the same way or at the same volume at which we talk about being boy crazy? Absolutely not. I would say if you filled up a room with girls and you asked how many of you have been called boy crazy, so many of them would raise their hand. If you filled up a room with boys and said how many of you have been called girl crazy, not so much. And I don't think girl crazy is stigmatized in the same way. If your way that you're taking boy crazy is that you like to hook up with a lot of guys or you like to date a lot of guys, like hell yeah, you can still be a feminist and have sex every weekend. Like I'm not telling you what to do. The negative connotation of boy crazy is really patriarchal, and it actually has to do with like the male gaze and like this sort of like male gaze prison that we're locked in. I think that's like how that label even came to be. And eventually we decided on a term for girl crazy, but if you look up the term girl crazy, more articles come up that are about being boy crazy. So I think the whole thing of projecting that onto specifically young girls, saying you're boy crazy, making it this bad thing, it's just not good. You're allowed to be a feminist and also want to be desired. I think you have to wonder, like, do I crave being desired? Do I crave male validation and affirmation? It's sticky. It's a slippery slope. For me, I figured out that I really craved male validation and affirmation. It was the only affirmation I was letting myself receive. And that took a lot of unpacking, a lot of inner work to not need that anymore and to give that validation to myself. Back in my day, it would have been called boy crazy, but I think what was really happening was I was feeling a lot of pressure from certain patriarchal standards, misogyny, all sorts of different things. And it kind of amounted in me requiring male validation and affirmation from men to make myself feel good. And I don't really think that was fully my fault. I was complicit in it, but I don't think like I started that engine.
Interesting.
So I think there's a lot to unpack there. And I think that if you're struggling with that and those themes, you can still be a feminist. Like no one's telling you that you can't do that.
Thank you for bringing that up. I never considered the other side. I think that's such an important POV, that it's not an equal distribution of how society, you know, makes us feel growing up.
It's like ladies' man.
Yeah.
And it's like weird.
Yeah, weird. But I'm so happy you brought that up.
Drop a hot take. First one, melon is bad.
All melon?
I really don't like it. And I, my whole life, have wanted to be like a cantaloupe, honeydew, watermelon girl. Like, I grew up on the Jersey Shore. I like the heat. Like, I see myself eating a piece of watermelon. Every time I try, I gag. And I am the least picky person on the face of the earth. Like, I will eat anything except for melon. I hate it. And when I find other people that hate melon, I'm like, oh, thank God. Because I feel like you're at a barbecue, everyone's eating watermelon. Like,
I respect that. I personally can't relate, but
You're like, I love melon.
I
I'm
respect
like,
where
I'm
you're coming
jealous. No, every year I'm like, this is the time. Watermelon girly. Nope, can't do it. So that's my first one. My second one is that I majored in theater in college, and I love Broadway, I love theater, I love musical theater. I'm a big fan of Golden Age musical theater over modern musical theater, and that comes as a hot take, being that I'm somebody that's really progressive, and a lot of those musicals are like stuck in the times. What I love very much about them is when people take the Golden Age musicals that maybe have some problematic themes and they revamp them and they work on the book a little bit. They switch the themes around to make them more modernized.
Like Company.
My Fair Lady was a really good example, and it was revived in the 2010s. I had seen it before and I hated it because it's so misogynistic as it was written, but they were writing it in the 50s. Of course it was. Like, what do you expect? Two men writing about a woman in the 50s, like, come on. Yeah. But the way that they changed it up, I was like, oh, Eliza Doolittle is like, can be a strong woman if we direct this differently. So I love that kind of stuff. I love the beginnings of musical theater because it's something so important to me. My favorite musical is Gypsy, so.
Yeah, Gypsy is a classic. I wouldn't say it's my favorite, but totally hear where you're coming from.
It's just like mother-daughter, I don't know, it resonates so deeply with me. And not to say I don't like modern musical theater, I love it. as well. I just prefer the more like the early stuff, and that always gets people like, how? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I would just rather see Gypsy than like any other show.
That's definitely a hot take.
Yeah, it's a hot take.
I respect it. Eli, I loved learning so much about you today. I think you are someone who truly is making a mark in this world by using your voice, speaking up about the things that matter to you, being vulnerable and sharing your story and your experiences. And I have to ask you before you leave, if you could share one piece of advice, imagine I handed you a microphone that could reach all of Gen Z, what would you want them to know?
Be kind. Like, I can't even tell you like how many people I've seen be unkind, and like, I lost someone very close to me who took her own life over the pandemic. It's so heavy, and like, it's such a heavy thing to go through with like your family and whatnot. And I think I realized like, you just don't know. You don't know what baggage someone is carrying. You don't know what baggage somebody else put on someone to carry. You don't know what someone's going through. Somebody could be having some really sad thoughts in their head. Someone could be going through something really dark, and you making a comment on the internet, saying something behind their back at them, or just being unkind to them in person, like that could just really take a bad day and make it horrible. And I just can't even get over how easy it is to be nice. It takes way less energy. It gives you way less wrinkles in the long run. And it's just like, it's so frustrating to me because I've seen bullying really shift from like an in-person thing to people hiding behind screens. And like, it could just be so harmful. And like, even as I try to be as authentic as possible, sometimes I'll say to myself, well, my problems aren't worth sharing, but you can drown in an ocean and you can drown in a puddle. Comparing your struggles to somebody else's struggles because you don't think they're as bad isn't taking yours away. You could still have anxiety and depression. And just because somebody has it worse doesn't mean you don't also have it. I would just say be kind. Like, people are so mean these days, and it's like, we just need some decent human love.
I couldn't agree more.
So easy to be nice.
We could all use a little bit more of that.
Yeah.
And I'm so sorry you went through that. Thank you for being vulnerable and sharing.
Thank you.
For sharing that message that I think we could all just do our part to be a little bit kinder, because you never know what someone else is going through. You
never know. Like,
so
you just never know. You can stumble upon someone, and being nice to them could make their whole day when it was the worst day of their life.
Completely. Like, if anything, it's a reminder to go out of your way to be kind to people.
Yeah.
So thank you.
I think that that's just so big. Like, even just like paying for someone's coffee, like texting a friend, like, I'm thinking of you. Like, those things can go a mile if someone's having a bad day.
It's so true. And Eli, thank you so much for coming on POVz. I loved having you on the show, and can't wait to have more of these conversations.
I know, me too. Thank you so much.
We need a part 2. Bring it in. Come here.
Yeah, I'll hug it out.
This is the best. Thank you so much for doing this. Oh, I can't wait.
Thank you for having me.
Before you go, can we take a selfie?
Yes.
Okay. Ready? 1.